They said I was lucky. They said I had the perfect husband. The dream life. The kind of marriage every woman dreamed of. They said I was living proof that fairy tales were real. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't see the nights I cried myself to sleep. They didn't hear the silence that echoed louder than any argument. They didn't know that sometimes love can look like a gift and feel like a cage. My name is Ava Monroe. And this is my story. Before I continue, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button if you believe pain can teach lessons no classroom ever could. Because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the kind of love that turns into poison. I'm speaking to you tonight from New York City. But I want to know, where are you watching or listening from? Type your country in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. 'Cause maybe my story will sound a little too familiar. They said I was blessed, married to the man every woman wanted. A successful New York entrepreneur with power, money, and charisma. The kind of man who could make any room pause when he walked in. And for a while, I believed I was blessed too. I believed that love and success could live in the same home. But I was wrong. Behind the penthouse walls, behind the expensive dinners and Instagram smiles, there was emptiness. Cold space where love used to live. He didn't hit me, no. But he knew how to break me with silence. He knew how to disappear for days and return like nothing happened. He knew how to make me feel like I was the one losing my mind. And I stayed. Because that's what good wives do, right? They stay. They pray. They smile through the pain and hope tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow never changed. And I started to change instead. I began to forget what laughter sounded like. I began to forget what it felt like to be touched with love instead of routine. He became a stranger I slept beside. And I became a ghost in my own home. People envied me. The designer clothes, the vacation photos, the diamond ring that caught the light in every picture. But if they looked close enough, they would have seen the truth. That the light in my eyes had gone out long before the flash went off. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. That maybe he was stressed, maybe we needed time. But deep down I knew. Something had shifted. And once that shift happens, there's no going back. One night, while the city outside glittered like it always did, I realized something painful. I had everything except peace. And peace is the one thing you can't buy. It's the one thing no mansion, no diamond, no man can give you if your soul feels empty. That was the night everything began to change. The night I stopped waiting for him to see me. The night I opened a door I should have left closed. To the world we were the Monroes, the couple everyone envied. Power, elegance, success. My husband, Daniel Monroe, was the definition of perfection. A man who built his empire from nothing, who turned heads everywhere he went, who spoke with the kind of confidence that made people listen. Every magazine called him New York's golden husband. And me. I was the woman standing beside him, smiling on cue, pretending to live the dream. People thought we had it all: money, influence, love. But no one knew the price I was paying to keep that image alive. Every morning, I woke up to an empty side of the bed. He was already gone, always in meetings. Always too busy. At night, I'd wait for him to come home, pretending I didn't see the lipstick smudges that weren't mine, pretending I didn't smell a perfume that didn't belong to me. When I asked questions, he'd laugh it off. He'd say, "Ava, stop being dramatic. You're imagining things." That's how he did it. He made me doubt my own eyes. He turned my instincts into insecurities. And I let him. Because when you love someone, you don't see what's right in front of you. You see what you hope is still there. We hosted dinner parties for business associates, smiling through lies, clinking glasses under chandeliers that sparkled like false promises. He'd hold my waist in public. Gentle, protective, proud. But the moment we were alone, that hand turned cold. He'd talk about stocks, projects, investments. But never about me. Never about us. And the silence grew louder. Every day felt like walking through a beautiful house that had no warmth. I decorated rooms just to distract myself from the emptiness. I filled closets, organized cabinets, hosted fundraisers, anything to fill the void. But no matter what I did, I couldn't fill the hole his absence left behind. People would message me on social media, telling me how lucky I was, how they wished they could have a marriage like mine. I'd reply with hearts and smile emojis, even as tears blurred my vision. Because lies are easier to post than pain. And when I finally tried to talk to him, really talk, he brushed me off. He said, "Ava, I'm doing all this for us. You don't understand pressure." Pressure. That's what he called neglect. That's what he called disappearing without explanation. Some nights he wouldn't even come home. He'd text me, "Don't wait up," like I was some stranger waiting for a favor. And when I confronted him, he turned it around. He said, "You've changed, Ava. You're not the woman I married." But how could I be, when the man I married wasn't the same either? The truth was, he didn't want a wife. He wanted an accessory. Something polished enough to stand beside him, silent enough not to outshine him. And the more I tried to be perfect, the more invisible I became. Until one evening, at a business gala filled with laughter and champagne, I saw him. Not Daniel, not my husband. But him, the man who'd later become my biggest mistake. He was standing across the room, watching me the way Daniel used to. As if I still mattered. As if someone finally saw me again. That night, something inside me shifted. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of everything that would follow. The lies, the guilt, the revenge, the regret. Because in that moment, I let my loneliness decide my fate. And I didn't realize, I was trading one kind of pain for another. Loneliness doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in quietly. Through small, unspoken moments. Through dinners eaten alone. Through birthdays forgotten. Through "I love yous" that sound more like obligations than feelings. I kept telling myself I was fine. That Daniel still loved me, just differently now. That maybe this was what marriage became after years together. But every time I looked at him, I saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. He was drifting away, and I was chasing after a ghost. I tried everything. Date nights, weekend getaways, little notes left on his desk. But nothing worked. He'd smile, say he was busy, kiss my forehead like I was a child, and leave again. And slowly, the ache inside me began to grow. It's dangerous when love turns into loneliness. Because loneliness doesn't ask for permission. It just takes your patience, takes your pride. And one day it takes your judgment too. It happened on a Thursday evening, one of Daniel's company events. He was supposed to arrive early with me, but of course he didn't. So I stood there alone, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, pretending I belonged. That's when I met him. Ethan Cole. Daniel's new business partner. He was nothing like my husband. Calm, observant, soft-spoken. The kind of man who looked at you like he could see the thoughts you were too afraid to say out loud. He noticed things Daniel hadn't noticed in years. The way I played with my bracelet when I was nervous. The way I hesitated before smiling. The way I looked around a room as if searching for someone who'd already stopped showing up. We talked for hours that night. About work. About life. About how success sometimes makes you forget what happiness feels like. He listened. Truly listened. And when he laughed at something I said, genuinely laughed, I felt something inside me wake up. Something I thought I'd buried a long time ago. After the event, he offered to walk me to my car. We stood outside under the city lights, the night air heavy with everything unsaid. He didn't touch me. He didn't even try. But the way he looked at me, he knew. We both knew. That look stayed with me long after I went home. Even when Daniel finally stumbled in hours later, smelling of another woman's perfume, all I could think about was the man who made me feel seen again. I tried to fight it. I told myself it was just attention, harmless, temporary. But once you've been starving for affection, even crumbs feel like a feast. And I was starving. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself thinking of Ethan more often than I should. We started exchanging polite texts, Hope you're doing well. Nice seeing you again. But soon the messages grew longer, deeper, more dangerous. He'd ask if I was okay, if Daniel still worked late, if I ever got time for myself. Simple questions. But each one felt like a lifeline. And little by little, I stopped caring about what was right. Because being wanted, truly wanted, felt better than being ignored. The first time he touched me, it wasn't planned. It wasn't even supposed to happen. It was raining, the kind of New York rain that makes the whole world blur. He'd driven me home after another event, and when I turned to thank him, I saw the concern in his eyes. That was all it took. One look, one moment, one mistake that would cost me everything. They say sin never starts loud, it whispers. And mine whispered through late-night messages, quiet dinners, and stolen moments I told myself didn't matter. First, I thought I could control it, that I could draw the line and stay on the safe side of wrong. But the truth, once you cross the first inch, the rest of the distance doesn't feel so far. Ethan and I became a secret I carried like perfume, invisible but impossible to hide for long. We met in quiet cafes uptown, in corners dim enough to erase guilt but bright enough to feel real. He'd listen to me talk about Daniel, about the silence, the neglect, the coldness that had become my life. And he'd say things Daniel hadn't said in years. Simple things. You deserve to be happy. You're stronger than you think. You shouldn't have to beg for love. Those words shouldn't have meant so much. But they did. Because when someone sees you at your weakest and still calls you beautiful, you forget everything else. Weeks turned into months. And soon I was lying better than I ever thought I could. I'm working late. I'm meeting a friend. Little phrases that tasted bitter but sounded believable. Every time Ethan touched me, I felt alive. And ashamed in the same breath. I'd go home to Daniel's apartment, our perfect, cold apartment, and look at the man I once promised forever. He was there, but his eyes weren't. He'd talk about work, his business trips. His phone lighting up with messages he'd never let me see. Sometimes I'd catch the faint smell of another woman's perfume on his shirt. And in those moments, I'd convince myself that what I was doing wasn't betrayal. It was balance. But deep down I knew. No matter how I justified it, I was becoming the very thing I hated. Then came the night everything began to unravel. Ethan wanted more. He said he loved me. He wanted me to leave Daniel, to start over somewhere far away, somewhere new. For a second the idea sounded like freedom. But then reality hit. Freedom from Daniel didn't mean freedom from what I'd done. I remember sitting by the window that night, watching the lights of New York flicker like they were judging me. Every siren, every honk, every echo in the street sounded like a reminder. You can't hide this forever. The guilt grew louder. In the mirror I barely recognized myself. The woman who once believed in loyalty and marriage had become a stranger, living two lives, loving two men, and losing herself in both. One evening Daniel came home early. He smiled, the first real smile in months, and said he'd booked us a surprise weekend getaway. He wanted to reconnect. I should have been happy, but all I felt was dread. 'Cause I knew, secrets don't stay buried forever. And mine was already beginning to rot through the surface. Secrets always have a scent. You can hide them for a while, but eventually the air changes. And that's how it started. Shift. A silence too heavy to be ordinary. It was 2 weeks after the getaway. Daniel had been acting different. Calmer, almost attentive. He started making breakfast again, sending random messages during the day, even leaving flowers on the counter with no note. For a moment I thought maybe we were finding our way back. But I should have known better. Men like Daniel don't change. They plan. One evening I walked into the apartment and found him sitting on the couch. Not watching TV, not on his phone, just waiting. He smiled when he saw me. That kind of slow, deliberate smile that makes your stomach twist. Then he said, "Ava, we need to talk." The way he said my name made my skin crawl. Cold. Like he'd rehearsed it. He reached for his phone, tapped something and turned the screen toward me. And there it was. Photo. Me and Ethan. Laughing. kissing, caught in a moment that was never supposed to exist outside of memory. My breath left my body. The room started spinning. I tried to speak, to explain, but the words got stuck somewhere between my heart and my throat. Daniel just sat there, quiet, eyes full of a rage too deep to shout. He didn't throw anything. He didn't scream. He just said 6 words that cut deeper than any knife. "You've made a fool of me." He stood, walked past me and whispered, "Do you know what's funny, Ava? I thought I was the monster in this marriage. Turns out we both are." That night he left. No calls, no messages, just silence, the kind that follows an explosion. Days passed. The shame was unbearable. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what I'd destroyed. Our wedding photo, the empty space on his side of the bed, the ring I couldn't bring myself to take off. I tried to reach him. He didn't answer. Then I tried Ethan, but he'd gone silent too. Until one morning I got a message. From Daniel. Just 3 words. "Turn on the news." And there it was. A photo of Ethan and Daniel shaking hands. A new business merger. Daniel's name proudly above Ethan's on the screen. The man I cheated with was now working for my husband. That's when I realized it wasn't an accident. Daniel had known for weeks. He'd played along, pretending to forgive, pretending to move on, while setting his trap. Every emotion hit me at once. Shock, fear, disgust, regret. I'd betrayed him, but somehow he was the one standing tall. And I was left staring at the wreckage of my own choices. That night I sat in the dark, shaking, replaying everything in my head. How one moment of weakness had turned into a chain reaction I couldn't stop. And somewhere deep down I knew this was only the beginning of my punishment. I used to believe revenge came with noise. Shouting, breaking things, chaos. But Daniel's revenge didn't make a sound. It moved slowly. Like poison in a glass of wine. You don't realize it's killing you until it's too late. After that night he didn't speak to me. Didn't block me. Didn't even fight. He just disappeared, quietly, into his new life. And for a while I thought silence was mercy. But silence, I learned, can be the cruelest punishment of all. Then things started happening. Subtle things. Emails from my company about reviewing my recent conduct. A board meeting suddenly moved without notice, one I wasn't invited to. Colleagues who once smiled now avoided eye contact. I didn't understand it. Until I saw the file. A folder left on my desk. Anonymous sender. Inside, screenshots, photos, messages, private moments between Ethan and me. Everything I thought I'd deleted. Perfectly organized and labeled. Someone had gone through my life piece by piece. And I didn't need a name to know who it was. Daniel hadn't yelled or begged for an apology. He'd gone for my reputation instead. He wanted me to feel what I made him feel. Stripped of pride, exposed, powerless. Within weeks my career was gone. The company said they had to maintain integrity. My name, once respected, became a whisper people avoided saying too loudly. Online, strangers called me every name imaginable. And Ethan. He vanished. Deleted his socials. Cut all contact. I tried to confront Daniel. I showed up at his new office, tears streaming, begging for just a conversation. The receptionist looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. Then Daniel came out, not angry, not sad, just calm. He looked me in the eye and said, "Now you know what silence feels like, Ava. Now you know what it's like to lose everything you built." He walked away before I could answer. That's when I realized his revenge wasn't about destroying me in a day. It was about watching me collapse over time. He wanted me to understand the pain of being invisible, the same pain I gave him when I chose someone else. Days blurred into weeks. I moved out of our apartment. Couldn't afford the rent anymore. I took a smaller place downtown, 1 room, no view. The kind of place where the city never sleeps but your dreams do. At night, I'd lie awake replaying everything. How I'd fallen for attention that felt like love. How I'd traded loyalty for loneliness. How Daniel had turned my betrayal into his masterpiece. And yet, somewhere deep inside I couldn't even blame him. Because I knew, if the roles were reversed, I might have done the same. By the time I tried to fix things, it was too late. He was already seen with someone new, a woman from the firm, beautiful, composed, untouched by the chaos I'd brought into his life. The tabloids called them the city's power couple. And there I was, a headline that faded too quickly. But revenge doesn't end when the world stops watching. It ends when the person you hurt finally forgives you. Or when you forgive yourself. And I hadn't done either. That's when I decided, if Daniel wanted to end me quietly, I'd show him just how loud regret could be. Because I still had one move left, and this time it wouldn't be about love. It would be about truth. Regret doesn't come all at once. It arrives in pieces, like shards of glass you keep stepping on, long after the mirror's been broken. By the time I decided to fight back, I'd already lost everything. My job, my friends, name. Even my reflection felt foreign. But there was still one thing I hadn't lost, the truth. And I was ready to use it. I gathered every message, every piece of evidence of Daniel's affairs. The late-night texts, the secret hotel receipts, the business trips that weren't business at all. If he wanted to ruin me publicly, I'd return the favor. I told myself it wasn't revenge. It was justice. But deep down I knew better. It was the same poison, just in a different cup. I waited for the perfect moment, the night of his company's charity gala. All the city's elite would be there. Every camera, every whisper, every pair of eyes. And I was going to expose him. I walked into that ballroom wearing the same red dress he once called unforgettable. People stared, some in pity, some in judgment. But I didn't care. I was done hiding. When Daniel saw me, his smile faltered for the first time in months. He walked over, voice calm, but his eyes were cold enough to burn. "Ava," he said quietly, "don't make this worse than it already is." I smiled, the kind of smile you give when you've already lost too much to care. "Oh, Daniel, it's already worse." I reached for my phone, ready to project his secrets across the screen, ready to watch his empire crumble. But before I could, he leaned closer and whispered, "You think I didn't plan for this?" Then the screens flickered. And before my footage could play, a video appeared. Me, Ethan. The affair. The betrayal. Every secret I thought I'd buried, now on display before the world. Gasps filled the room. People turned. Phones lifted. And Daniel just stood there, unmoving, calm as stone. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was humiliation, public, irreversible, complete. Security escorted me out. No one dared to speak to me. Not even Ethan, who, I later learned, had already left the country weeks ago under Daniel's quiet threat. By the next morning my name was everywhere. The disgraced wife. The cheating woman. The scandal New York couldn't stop watching. I lost everything again. Only this time there was nothing left to rebuild. For days I stayed in my apartment, curtains drawn, phone off, staring at the ceiling. Sometimes I'd replay that night over and over, wondering if there was a moment I could have stopped it. A single word, a single choice that might have changed the ending. But there wasn't. Every path led here. One evening I saw Daniel on TV, smiling beside his new fiancée, giving an interview about forgiveness and second chances. He said pain teaches us to love better. I almost laughed. Because pain hadn't taught me to love better. It had taught me how easily love turns into vengeance. And for the first time I realized something terrifying. Maybe Daniel hadn't ruined me. Maybe I'd ruined myself. And he'd just handed me the mirror to watch it happen. When the noise finally fades. When the headlines move on to someone else. You're left alone with the one sound you can't escape. Your own thoughts. The first week after the gala, I didn't leave my apartment. The city kept moving, horns, laughter, life. But inside my walls time stood still. My phone buzzed endlessly. Missed calls. Messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Journalists. Former friends pretending to check in. Even strangers with opinions about my life, my choices, my worth. And through it all, I stayed silent. Because sometimes silence isn't peace, it's punishment. I'd look in the mirror every morning and barely recognize the woman staring back. The eyeliner smeared, the eyes dull, the face tired from crying. There was no villain there, no hero either. Just someone who made too many wrong turns and called it love. One night, I walked to the bridge near our old apartment, the same one Daniel and I used to cross after late dinners, back when things were simple. I stood there, watching the lights of New York shimmer on the water. The city felt bigger than ever. And I felt smaller than I'd ever been. For a moment, I thought about letting the wind take me, about disappearing completely. But then I remembered something my mother used to say. Pain doesn't end you, Ava. It reveals you. And I realized, maybe this was who I truly was. Broken, yes, but still breathing. The next morning I started writing again. Not to post, not to prove anything. Just to remember who I was before love turned to war. I wrote about choices. About how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's shadow. About how sometimes the people who hurt us aren't cruel. They're just reflections of our own damage. I stopped blaming Daniel. Stopped hating Ethan. Stopped making excuses. Because the truth was simple. I'd created my own destruction piece by piece. And once I admitted that, the guilt started to feel lighter. Not gone, just bearable. I began volunteering at a local shelter. A place where people came with stories heavier than mine. Pain looks different on everyone, but it sounds the same. Tired, quiet, longing for redemption. And in helping them, I started helping myself. Some nights, I'd still dream of Daniel. Not the angry version, but the one who used to dance with me in the kitchen, barefoot and smiling. In those dreams, we never fought. We never betrayed. We just loved simply and honestly. And when I woke up, I'd whisper into the darkness, "I'm sorry." Not because I wanted him back, but because I finally understood what love really costs when you take it for granted. Forgiveness didn't come all at once. It came in fragments. Quiet mornings, new routines, long walks without tears. It came when I stopped trying to fix the past and started learning how to live with it. I wasn't the same woman anymore. Maybe I never would be. But for the first time in years, I wasn't pretending. And maybe that was enough. They say time heals everything. But that's not true. Time doesn't heal, it reveals. It shows you who you really are after the storm has passed. And in my case, it showed me that guilt can live beside growth, and regret can walk hand in hand with redemption. It's been a year since everything fell apart. A year since the headlines faded. Since Daniel stopped existing as a person and became a memory. He married her, the woman from the firm. I saw the photos online, her smile bright, his eyes softer than they ever were with me. And surprisingly, I didn't feel hate, just a quiet kind of acceptance. Because sometimes losing someone isn't the punishment, it's the lesson. I don't tell my story for sympathy. I tell it because I want someone, maybe you listening to this right now, to understand how dangerous emotional emptiness can be. How silence in a relationship can become a third person. And how one moment of weakness can burn down everything you spent years building. If you're feeling unseen right now, if you're holding on to a love that's starting to feel like loneliness, don't do what I did. Don't fill the emptiness with another body, another voice, another temporary high. Sit with your pain. Listen to what it's trying to teach you. Because sometimes the ache isn't asking you to leave, it's asking you to heal. Love isn't supposed to complete you. It's supposed to meet you whole. And if you forget that, you'll spend your life searching for pieces of yourself in other people, and calling it love. I still think about Daniel sometimes. Not as the man who ruined me, but as the man who taught me what self-destruction looks like when it wears a pretty face. He was my mirror, and I didn't like the reflection. But without that mirror, I would have never seen myself clearly. These days I live quietly. No grand plans. No dramatic endings. Just peace, the kind you earn after losing everything that once defined you. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about setting yourself free from the version of you that keeps bleeding. So, if you're listening to me right now, wherever you are in the world, tell me in the comments. Was I wrong? Was what I did unforgivable, or just human? And if you were in my shoes, with a heart that felt invisible, what would you have done? I really want to know. Because maybe you've been there too. Maybe your story isn't so different from mine. Tell me where you're watching or listening from tonight. I read every single one. Because pain sounds different in every language. But healing always feels the same. Before you scroll, do one thing for me. Hit that subscribe button if you believe that even broken hearts can still beat with purpose. Because this story wasn't just about cheating. It was about choices, about consequences, about the way love can become a weapon when we stop taking care of it. My name is Ava, and this was my story. A story of love, betrayal, and the kind of regret that doesn't destroy, but transforms.